Okay, grab a cup of coffee. I got mine. Drinking Dunkin' today. Dunkin' from home. No, I didn't go to Dunkin' Donuts. And strap in. We're going to talk about logging in Python. I made a video a while back logging in C Sharp. I created my own like logging handler, and a lot of people found that useful. And I thought, let's talk about that in Python. I think this will also be equally useful if you're trying to debug Python or you just have a script that runs on its own. You obviously want to keep logs, so if anything happens, you can go through and say, what happened here? What went wrong? And let's try to fix it. So that's what we're talking about today. Feel free to subscribe if you like this content. Also, feel free to go look at my previous videos. You guys have been supporting me greatly, and I do appreciate it. So yeah, let's talk about logging. We're really going to go through pretty much this tutorial together, or this article, Logging in Python. So I'll have it linked down below if you want to read every aspect of this article, but we're just going to cover what I think is important. And here we go. VS Code up, I imported logging. So what's nice is Python provides this module right out of the box for us. We don't have to install anything. And then down below here we have, or I listed the severity levels of different logging. So for example, you might have everything, like if a variable gets set or something, you might debug and log that as debug and just spit out what that variable equals. But you might have down below, you might have an exception catcher and an exception handler. If you can't connect to a database, maybe you'll see that as more critical. So you can qualify different pieces of logging based on how severe you think they are. And we'll see why that's important here in a second. So let's write a log. We can do logging.warning. And here we can pass in some kind of log message. So this is a warning. And we can save it. We can run this, and down below we get warning. It shows us the level at the very beginning. This is a warning. And this root right here is the default name of this logger. But something to take note of, something else default. If we do logging.debug without any configuration whatsoever, this is a debug. Wow, I can't type. If we go to run this, you're probably expecting it to read out this and also to read out this. But you would be wrong, because by default, the logger is only going to log warning and above. So here's the severity level. This is the bottom. Even though it's at the top, it's kind of confusing. But think of this as the bottom. This is the next one. This is the next one. This is the next one, and this is the most critical in terms of severity. So these ones are all going to be shown. Anything warning and above by default will be spat out by the debugger, but these two will not. So how do we change that? How do we alter the configuration to show debug and up? Well, first let's clear this. This is kind of getting a little clunky. And above our logging messages, let's set some configuration. So logging.basic_config, and in here we can pass some different parameters. So for example, level, we can set equal to logging.debug. And actually it's not this debug, there's another debug right here. That's a constant. And what this is saying now is debug and up show those log messages. So pretty much everything at this point. So now if we save and run this, we will now see both warning and debug. And same thing if I do logging.info, this is an info message. If I change this to logging.info, what's going to happen is it's not going to care about debug anymore, because debug is below in terms of severity, and it's just going to show everything from info and above. And if we save and run this, we're not going to see debug anymore. So why is this useful? I've seen this in apps before, where if you write out debug statements in your log file without cleaning up that log file is probably going to get really big really quick, because the debug is just really spitting out a lot of information that most of the time you probably won't find very relevant. So what apps will let you do is you can switch what you want spat out in that logging file, and therefore it doesn't become too big, too quick, and take up too much space on your hard drive, and it just kind of spirals out of control. But if something ends up breaking, the app will let you switch it to debug, maybe for a short instance. That way you can see everything going on, and then switch it back to the appropriate level you want it to be at. So what's some other configuration? Of course, you probably don't want your log to be in the command line. You don't want it to be shown in the console. You probably want it to be logged into a file so it can run on its own and you can just check it accordingly. So what we can do is we can add another parameter and we can give it a file name. So this, I'm just going to make the path go to the same place and we can call it test.log. And then we're also going to set a file mode, which is going to be equal to W, for write. And now if we run this, we can see that we get this new test.log file. And if we open it, here's the warning and here's the name. So we didn't change the name yet of the logger. And this is a warning, info. This is an info message. So something to note about the file mode, each time this Python script is ran, it's going to rewrite the logger. So write is probably not what you're going to want. You're probably going to want A for append, so it'll just append onto the file. And if I run it again like I just did, we can see it appended the latest messages down below. Now, something I like to do in my logs, and I'm sure if you use logs regularly, you think so too, is you want to have a timestamp, because if you know around the time that something occurred, you can look at the log file, you can narrow down to that time and see what was going on. So what we can do here as well is alter the output and the format of that output. So there's a format parameter as well, and it looks a little something like this. We have a percentage, and then inside we can do ASC time, and then outside of the parentheses S, and then a dash if you want to use a dash, if you want to use a colon. Actually, I think I'm going to go with a colon. I'll do that, space, same thing, percentage inside of the parentheses message, and then an S after that. And now if we run this and look at the test log, we get the timestamp, we get the message, but we no longer get the severity level. So let's go back, let's look at our format. And maybe we'll have the severity in the middle. So I'll do another colon, percentage, parentheses, level, name, and then outside of the parentheses S. And let's try this again. Here we have a timestamp, we have the severity, and then we have the message. And to me, I think this is the perfect combination because all of these different things are going to be useful for you to narrow down what was the issue. Okay, so that's all I'm going to show in this video. I think we're going to have another part where we're going to log variable data. We're going to format this timestamp a bit. And if that sounds cool, feel free to stay tuned for that one, or it might be out by the time you watch this. So if you want to know more, go look at that video. And thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. And as always, take care.